Welcome to the Thursday Breathe in the Book meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Kelly, and I am an alcoholic. Hi, family. Are there any other alcoholics present? Right on. It's going to be a party. Whoopee! Whoopee! A whoopee party. I love it. All right, so those of you that are new to this meeting, it's a little different from any other big book meeting because we don't go around the room and just read paragraph by paragraph. In this meeting, only one person reads. That would be me. But during the reading, there's crosstalk, so you can shout out questions or answers and things like that. We usually have a lot of people here with a lot of time, and it becomes like sitting on the couch kind of talking with somebody. Instead of just opening up the book to a certain paragraph or book or chapter, what we usually do is an overview of the 164 so you know why we're reading, what we're reading, and how it fits into the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and where it's found in the book. We've already done that, so the overview is going to be really quick. In the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it's two sections. The first section is the first 164 pages. That's what is our program, okay? After that, there's stories. So it's really not that big. If the 164 is what's the program. Stories are very important. But with the 4 different editions, they've changed the stories in each of those editions. Kept some, taken some out, added some new ones, okay? But the 164 doesn't change. It was written in 1939, okay? In the very beginning of the preface, it says, we don't change the 164, and we hope when you read this, let's say in 1939 you picked up this book and you were wondering if you're an alcoholic, and you start reading from the beginning of this book. That's kind of the idea, because there was only maybe 40 to 100 of us at the time. In the beginning it says, we hope when you read this or you read some of the stories, you go, oh, I felt like that. I think this might work for me. And then as we go through, there's the forewords that talks about our history. It talks about this is precisely how we have recovered. We start off with the doctor. It's the doctor, let's say, down at the detox or the hospital. Dr. Silkworth. He's the one that detoxed our founders and pretty much the one that goes, you got an allergy, you're screwed. you basically need a spiritual slap on the head and we don't have a pill to fix that. You have this allergy. You're irritable, restless, and discontent. Okay? But whatever these men have to say seems to work. And then we go into Bill's story, chapter 1, which is our first founder, Bill Wilson. And he tells a story just like in a speaker meeting, how he crossed that line, how he thought he was invincible, until it caught up with him, along with depression and stealing from family, and then the message being carried to him and the importance of carrying it to another. And there is a solution. We all kind of chime in and go, a lot of us were just like Bill. If you think you got what we have a solution. Just keep reading, okay? In More About Alcoholism, we read it in a meeting. It starts off with, nobody wanted to admit they were real alcoholics, right? And just like in a participation meeting, we have a couple different stories in there that'll help you understand whether or not you are or are not an alcoholic. Up until this point, we've talked about spirituality a lot, so there's a whole chapter, chapter 4, We Agnostics, that's dedicated to don't overthink the God thing. You basically lack that power, lack of power is my dilemma, to get sober on your own, right? So you are not that power, so there's a power outside of you or greater than you that's going to help you recover, and if it just so happens to be a room full of us who haven't died of this yet, then that's a great start. It doesn't say you have to define who God is to start the steps, because right after that and how it works is where we start. And when we read in a meeting, the portion of chapter 5, it ends usually with A, B, and C, which is, if you've read up until this point, our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures, you've realized 3 things. Oh my God, I'm an alcoholic. Can't manage my own life. Probably no human power is going to help me get sober, including me, but something bigger than me is going to work, right? Now you're available. Now you can do step 3, learn about self-will, run riot, and do an inventory. Resentment, fear, and sex, right? And then we move into chapter 6 into action, where we get a sponsor. We have a sponsor, so we're now going to read that inventory, character defects, amends, and then 10 and 11, and keeping it clean. Chapter 7, working with others, is how we carry that message to the one that's still suffering, the beginning of sponsorship. To the wives, to the family, to the employers, this book was picked up by many people in 1939, some of which are our employers, our family, and our wives. But it has a lot of good information about the alcoholic and the progressiveness of this disease, or when we're trying to get back into our family's lives or work. And then A Vision for You, Bill sums it all up, and kind of, our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little, right? Here's our book, Don't Die. And the first story in the story section is always Dr. Bob's Nightmare, our second founder, Dr. Bob. Right now we're in between the big book and this book, Experience, Strength, and Hope. Because what we're doing is we're kind of going through the history now of what happened from 1935 when Bill Wilson got sober until the book came out, okay? Our original members, including some here in California, but starting with how we got sober. So some of those stories were taken out, like the one we're reading tonight, and some are still in the big book. So we've got Bill, our first founder. He got sober December 11, 1934. Then we have Dr. Bob 6 months later in Akron, because Bill goes over to Akron, does that little hotel scene where he's like, oh, should I go in the bar? Should I, and he finds Bob, Dr. Bob. And Dr. Bob's birthday is June 10th, 1935. Happens to be AA's birthday. 2 or more are gathered, right? 16 days later, they decide to go and help the man on the bed, Bill Dotson. And Bill Dotson, AA number 3, was the other story we read right after that. It's still in the book, okay? That followed with Ernie Galbraith, who we read last week. His story is the 7-month slip, and it was taken out of the first edition. So it would only be found in this book. This book is all the stories that were taken out of the first, second, and third edition. So Experience, Strength, and Hope. So now, over in Ohio, we've got Bill, Dr. Bob, Ernie, and Bill Dotson, AA, the man on the bed, right? So now, Bill doesn't really want to go back to New York, but he does. And he heads back over to New York about August of 1935. And he wants to help somebody. He really wanted to stay in Ohio and get this AA thing off and going. But instead, he goes back to New York. And he calls good old Dr. Silkworth, the one that wrote the doctor's opinion in New York, same place he got sober, and he talks to Dr. Silkworth about finding another alcoholic. That next alcoholic happens to be Hank Pankhurst. Okay? Right? Parkhurst. Sorry, I always say Pankhurst. So now how many people have read the doctor's opinion? And at the very end of the doctor's opinion, he says, when I often want a mental uplift, I think of 2 of you guys that got sober here. One, this guy of pathological mental deterioration, that's Hank Parkhurst. Okay? So he got sober with so he's mentioned in the doctor's opinion. He's also the one that wrote to the employers, or is credited for writing to the employers, okay? His story is the Unbeliever. Hank Pankhurst, or Parkhurst, he was born in 1895. He died in 54. He got sober around November of 1935 in New York with Bill and Dr. Silkworth. Okay? He was frequently described as a redhead charming man with a great talent for business, right? He was also supposed to be a football player. We don't know whether he played pro ball or college ball or something, but Jim Burwell, who we'll read about later, he and Jim were both, think of his story's name, Unbeliever. They were the ones that didn't want as much of the God talk in the early part of the book. So to the employers, there's a section where it talks about he was an executive for a big oil firm who had a lot of employees under him. That was Standard Oil. He ended up getting fired from them. He started something called Honor Dealers, and some people think that it was because he wanted to kind of stick it to Standard Oil for firing him because he was drinking. How dare they, right? So he starts his little business off in New Jersey, and Ruth Hawk is his secretary. Now, Bill goes down there, and they're going to start writing the book. One of the things, he falls in love with Ruth, even though he's married to Kathleen. Follow along. And when Ruth wouldn't marry him, it's one of his resentments he had against Bill. They decided they also couldn't pay to keep this thing going, and they wanted to move the AA office and where they're going to start writing the book up to New York. And it was one of the things that Hank couldn't let go of, and he ended up getting drunk. But Ruth Hawk is famously quoted in the book Pass It On, another part of our great literature that talks about our history, that we would have never, ever had a big book had it not been for Bill writing it. And we would have never probably had a big book had it not been for Hank helping get it off the ground with Works Publishing. Okay? I kind of really like Hank in a way because I can totally relate. He made up slips to sell stock so that we can get money to print the book for Works Publishing, and we just sign it, President. Don't you know who I am, right? Another thing that he kind of got upset about later on. But that's the story. So now the big book does get put out, and what happens is Hank gets drunk. He gets, divorces his wife. He ends up getting married and divorced a couple times. But one of the people he gets, you're going to hear about this name, Clarence, later on. Clarence in Ohio, he marries Clarence's sister-in-law, right? So he's pissed off at Bill. He's still drinking. He's not liking that he took his furniture, even though they bought, like you're so drunk, you sell your furniture to somebody, and then when they take it, you get pissed off and go, excuse me, that's my furniture. And Bill took the furniture to the new office and paid for it like a second time. But Bill kept that furniture, and it was at Stepping Stones, I think, until Bill died. A little bit of AA trivia. Ruth Hawk is the secretary that was originally Hank's secretary. But then also, you'll hear a lot about her in our history. She's the one that typed up a lot of the pieces of the big book. And, answered all the letters when people would write in after we started getting off the ground. Ruth Hawk, yeah. She would be basically AA secretary. So, to kind of wrap it all up, then he went up to Ohio and with Clarence and started a little bit of beef because he had a resentment and never really gained long-term sobriety. But that is Hank, and it's very important to our history that this wonderful man who was a very, very good writer is why we have, one of the reasons why we have a big book, because of his eagerness and great ideas. Also, because he got drunk right after the first edition came out, he was the first one taken out of the big book, and he's the first one in the Experience, Strength, and Hope book. So if you get this book, the very first one in the very first section would be Hank. You ready to read? Do you guys like the little bit of history beforehand? Yeah. So now we've got 5 of us. Wait. Bill, Bob, Bill Dotson, Ernie. Oh, no. He's number 5. So we're on number 5. As far as the people that had stories in the book. So his story is called The Unbeliever. Dull. Listless. Semi-comatose. I lay on my bed in a famous hospital for alcoholics. Death, or worse, had been my sentence. What was the difference? What difference did anything make? Why think of those things which were gone? Why worry about the results of my drunken escapades? What the hell were the odds if my wife had discovered the mistress situation? 2 swell boys, sure. But what the difference would a corpse or an asylum imprisoned father make to them? Thoughts. Stop whirling in my head. That's the worst of the sobering up process. The old think tank is still geared up on high. What do I mean high? High. Oh, where did that come from? Oh yeah, that first Cadillac I had. It had 4 speeds. It had a high gear, a high gear, insane asylum. How that bus could scamper. Yes, even the liquor probably poisoned me. What had that little doctor said this morning? Thoughts hesitated for a moment. Stop your mad turning. What was I thinking about? Oh yes, the doctor. This morning I reminded Doc, so now he's where? He's in New York in the hospital with Dr. Silkworth, who wrote the doctor's opinion. Okay. This morning I reminded Doc, this was my 10th visit. I had spent a couple $1,000s on these trips, and those I had financed for the plastered playgirls, who also couldn't sober up. Jackie was a honey, though, until she got plastered, and then she went on a hellion. Wonder what the gutter she's in now. Where was I? Oh, I asked the doctor to tell me the truth. He owed it to me for the amount of money I had spent. He faltered. Said I'd been drunk, that's all. Didn't I know that? But Doc, you're evading. Tell me honestly, what's the matter with me? I'll be all right, did you say? But Doc, you've said that before. You said that once, that if I stopped for a year, I would be over the habit and would never drink again. I didn't drink for over a year, but I did start to drink again. Tell me, what is the matter with me? I'm an alcoholic. Ha ha and ho ho. As if I didn't know that. But aside from your fancy name for a plain drunk, tell me why I drink. You say a true alcoholic is something different from a plain drunk? What do you mean? Let me have it cold. Brief and with no trimmings. An alcoholic is a person who has an allergy to alcohol, is poisoned by it. One drink does something to the chemical makeup of the body. That drink affects the nerves. And in a certain number of hours, another drink is medically demanded. I love that. Medically demanded. And so the vicious cycle is started. An ever smaller amount of time between drinks to stop those screaming, twitching, invisible wires called nerves. I know that history, Doc. How the spiral tightens. A drink, unconscious, awake, drink, unconscious, poured into the hospital, suffer the agonies of hell, the shakes, thoughts running wild, brain unleashed, engine without a governor. But hell, Doc, I don't want to drink. I've got one of the stubbornest willpowers known in business. I stick at things, man. I get them done. I've stuck on the wagon for months and have not bothered by it. And then suddenly, incomprehensibly, an empty glass in my hand and another spiral started. How does the doc explain that one? He couldn't. That was one of the mysteries of true alcoholism. A famous medical foundation had spent a fortune trying to segregate the reasons for the alcoholic as compared to the plain, hard, heavy drinker, had tried to find the cause, and all they had been able to determine as a fact was that practically all of the alcohol in every drink taken by the alcoholic went to the fluid in which the brain floated. Why a man ever started when he knew those things was one of the things that could not be fathomed. Only the damn fool publicly believed it a matter of weak willpower, fear, ostracism, loss of family, loss of position, the gutter. Nothing stopped the alcoholic. Doc, what do you mean nothing? What, an incurable disease? Doc, you're kidding me. You're trying to scare me into stopping, right? Yeah? What's that you say? You wish you were? What are those tears in your eyes, Doc? What's that? 40 years you've spent at this alcohol business, and you have yet to see a true alcoholic cured? Your life defeated and wasted? Oh, come on, Doc. What would some of us do without you? Even if only to sober up. But Doc, let's have it. What is going to be my history from here out? Some vital organ will stop, or the madhouse of a wet brain? How soon? Let me weigh it out, right? We do that. It's kind of like that. To go on to the bitter end or accept spiritual help, and my first thought is, well, hold, don't push me. Right? Yeah, how bad is this spiritual death? Come on, you know. A wet brain, how soon? I mean, I still got like 2 years left, within 2 years? But Doc, I've got to do something about it. I'll see doctors, I'll go to sanitariums. Surely the medical profession knows something about it. So little, you say? But why? Messy. Yes, I'll admit, there is nothing messier than an alcoholic drunk. What's that, Doc? You know a couple of fellows that were steady customers here that haven't been drunk for about 10 months? Psh, what? My first thought is, they don't do it right. They're not as good at it as I am, right? But you say they haven't drank in 10 months? You say they claim they are cured and that they make an avocation, remember, a hobby, okay, of passing it on to others. What have they got? You don't know? And you don't believe they're cured? Well, why tell me about it? A fine fellow, you say. Plenty of money, and you're sure it isn't a racket? Just wants to be helpful? Call him up for me, will you, Doc? How Doc had hated to tell me. Thoughts, stop knocking at my door. Why can't I get drunk like other people, get up the next morning, toss my head a couple of times, and go to work? Why do I have to shake so that I can't hold a razor? Why does every little muscle inside me have to feel like a crawling worm? Why do even my vocal cords quiver when words are gibberish until I've had a big drink? Poison, of course. But how could anyone understand such a necessity for a drink that has been loaded with pepper to keep it from bouncing? Can any mortal understand such secret shame in having to have a drink as to make a person keep the bottles hidden all over the house? The morning drink, shame and necessity, weakness, remorse. But what do the family know about it? What do the doctors know about it? Little Doc was right. They know nothing. They just say, be strong and don't take that drink. Suffer through it. They called Dr. Silkworth Little Doc because he was a little guy with blue eyes. What the hell do they know about suffering? Not sickness, not a bellyache. Oh yes, your guts get so sore that you cannot place your hands on them. Oh sure, every time you go, you twist and writhe in pain. What the hell does any non-alcoholic know about suffering? Thoughts. Stop this mad merry-go-round. And worst of all, this mental suffering, the hating yourself, the feeling of absurd, irrational weakness, the unworthiness. Oh, out that window. Use the gun in the drawer. What about the poison? Go out in a garage and start the car. Yeah, that's the way out. But then people will say, he was plastered. I can't leave that story behind. That's worse than coward. Isn't there someone who understands? Thoughts, please, oh please stop. I'm going nuts. Or am I nuts now? Never, never again will I take another drink. Not even a glass of beer. Even that starts it. Never, never, never again. And yet I've said that a dozen times, and inexplicably, I found an empty glass in my hand, and the whole story repeated. My Lord, the tragedies that sprang out of her eyes when I came home with a breath on me and fear. The smiles wiped off the kids' faces. Terror stalking through the house. Yeah, that changed it from a home into a house. Not drunk yet, but they knew what was coming. Mr. Hyde's moving in. And so, I'm going to die. Or a wet brain. What was it that fellow said who was here this afternoon? Damn fool, thought. Get out of my mind. Now, I know I'm going nuts. And science knows nothing about it. And psychiatrists, I've plenty on them. Thoughts, go away. Ugh. No, I don't want to think about what that fellow said this afternoon. He's trying. Idealistic as hell. Nice fellow, too. Probably talking about Bill, right? Oh, why do I have to suffer with this revolving brain? Why can't I sleep? What was it he said? Oh, yes. Came in and told about this his terrific drunks, his trips up here. The same thing I'm going through. Yeah, he's an alcoholic, all right. And then he told me he knew he was cured. Told me he was peaceful. And I'll know peace again? But they didn't carry constant fear around with him. Happy because he felt free, but it's screwy. He said so himself. But he did get my confidence when he started to tell what he had gone through. It was so exactly like my case. He knows what this torture is. He raised my hopes so high, it looked as though he had something. I know, I guess I was so sold that I expected him to spring some kind of pill. And I asked him desperately what it was. And he said, God. I laughed. A ball bat across my face would have been no greater shock. I was so high with hope and expectation. How can a man be so heartless? He said that it sounded screwy, but it worked. At least it had with him. Said he was not a religionist. In fact, didn't go to church much. My ears came up at that. His unconventionality attracted me. Said that some approaches to religion were screwy. Talked about some of the simplest truths in the world had been often all balled up by complicating it. That attracted me. Oh, get out of my mind. What a fine religion bird I'd be. Imagine all the glee with the gang at me getting religion. Phooey. Thoughts, please slow down. Why don't they give me something to go to sleep? Lie down in green pastures. The guy's nuts. I'll forget about him anyway. And so, it's the madhouse for me. Glad Mother's dead. She won't have to suffer that. If I'm going nuts, maybe it better be crazy the way he is. At least the kids wouldn't have to have the insane father whisper to carry through life. Life's cruel. The puny-minded, curtain-hiding gossip. Didn't you know his father was committed for insanity? What a sly label that would be to hang those boys. Damn the gossiping. Reputation shredding busybodies who put their noses into other people's business. He laid in the same damp, suffered, gone through hell, made up his mind to get well, studied alcoholism. Jung. Blank medical foundation, asylums, Hopkins. Many said incurable disease, impossible. Nearly all known cures had been through religion. Revolted him. Made a study of religion. More he studied, the more it was bunk to him. Not understandable, self-help hypnosis. Then the thought hit him that people had it all twisted up. They were trying to pour everyone into molds, put tags on them, tell them what they had to do and how they had to do it for the salvation of their own souls. When, as a matter of fact, people were through worrying about their souls. They just wanted action right here, right now. A lot of tripe was just usually built up around the simplest and most beautiful ideas in the world. And now, did he put the idea? Bunk. Bunk. Why in hell am I still thinking about him? In hell. It's good. I'm in hell, he said. I came to the conclusion that there is something, I know not what it is, but it's bigger than I. If I will acknowledge it, if I will humble myself, I will give in and bow in submission to that something, and then try to lead a life as fully in accord with my idea of good as possible. I will be in tune. And later, the word good contracted into his mind to maybe mean God. But mister, I can't see any guy with a long white whiskers up there just waiting for me to have a plea. And what did he answer? Said I was trying to complicate it. Of course. Why did I insist on making it human? All I had to do was believe in some power greater than myself and knuckle down and do it. And I said, maybe, but tell me, mister, why are you wasting your time up here? Don't hand me any bunk about being more blessed to give than to receive. Asked him what this thing cost, and he laughed. He said it wasn't a waste of time. In doping it out, isn't that crazy? In doping it out, man. He had thought of something somebody had said. A person never knew a lesson until he tried to pass it on to someone else. And that he had found out every time he tries to pass this on, it became more vivid to him. So if we wanted to get hard-boiled about it, he owed me. I didn't owe him. That's a new slant. This guy's crazy as a loon. Get away from him, brain. Picture me going around telling other people how to run their lives. If I could only go to sleep. My goodness, the sedatives don't seem to be taking hold. He could visualize a great fellowship of us, quietly passing from this alcoholic to another. Alcoholic. Nothing organized, not ministered, not missionaries. What a story. Though we'd have to do it to get well. Some kind of miracle had to happen in his life. Common sense guy at that. His plan does fire the imagination. Told him it sounded like hypnotism to me, and he said, what of it? Didn't care it was Yogi Sim, self-hypnotism, or anything else. 4 of them were, well, that's so damn hypocritical. I get beat every other way, and then I turn around and lay it down in God's lap. Damn if I'd ever turn to God. What a low-down, cowardly, despicable trick that would be. Don't believe in any God anyway. Just a lot of hooey to keep the masses in subjugation. World's worst inquisitions have been practiced in his name. And he said, do I have to turn into an inquisitionist? If I don't knuckle down, I die. Why the low-down missionary? What a bastardly screw to put to one person. A witch burner. That's what he is. The hell with him and all his damn theories. Witch burner. Sleep. Oh, come on to my door. That last was the 885th sheep over the fence. Guess I'll throw in some black ones. Sheep up the shepherd. Oh, wise men. What was that story? Hell. There I go, back on the same line. Told him I couldn't understand, and I could not believe anything I couldn't understand. He said he supposed then that I didn't use electricity. No one actually understood where it came from or what it was. Nuts to him. He's got too many answers. What did he think the nub of the whole thing was? Subjugate self, some power above, ask for help, mean it, try passing it on. Asked him what he was going to name this. Said it would be fatal to give it any kind of a tag, to have any kind of formality. Oh my gosh. Can I just pause? Has anybody else had nights like this? Just talking to themselves, and then all of a sudden the next thought comes back in, and then we're like, oh, I got to get sober, what did they say down there at that TLC club? Oh, right? And then the birds are chirping, then gosh, I can't go to sleep. Well, should I get a drink? No, I'm not going to get a drink. Yeah, I'm going nuts. Tried to get him into an argument about miracles, about immaculate conception, about stars leading the 3 wise men, Jonah and the whale. He wanted to know what difference those things made. He didn't even bother his head about them. If he did, he would get tight again. He would get drunk again. And we start picking things apart like that, right? So I asked him what he thought about the Bible. He said he read it and used those things he understood. He didn't take the Bible literally as an instruction book, for there were no nonsense you could not make out of it that way. Though I had him when I asked about the past sins I had committed. Guess I've done everything in the book. I suppose I would have to adopt the attitude that was all forgiven. Here I am, pure and clean as the driven snow. Or else I was going to go through life flogging myself mentally, beating myself up. Bah! But he had the answer for that one too. Said he couldn't call back the hellish things he had done, but he figured life might be a ledger page. If he did a little good here and there, maybe the score would be evened up someday. On the other hand, if he continued as he had been going, there would be nothing but debit items on the sheet. Kind of common sense. This is ridiculous. I have lost all power of logic. Would I fall for all that religious line? Let's see if I can get to thinking straight. That's it. I'm going to do much thinking. Just calm myself. Quietly, quiet now, relax every muscle. Start at the toes and move up. Insane, wet brain. Oh, those boys. What a mess my life is. Mistress, how I hate her. I know, that's the matter. That fellow gave me an emotional upset. I'll list every reason I couldn't escape this way of thinking after laughing at this religious stuff in all those years I'd been a hypocrite. That's one. Second, if there was a God, why all this suffering? Wait a minute. He said that was one of the troubles. We've tried to give God some form. Make it just a power that will help. Third, it sounds like the Salvation Army. Told him that And he said he was not going around singing on any street corners, but nevertheless the Salvation Army did good work. Simply, if he heard a guy suffering the torments, he told his story and belief. There I go thinking again. Just started to get calmed down. Sleep, boys. Insane, death. Mistress, life all messed up. Business, Now listen, take hold. What am I going to do? Never. That's final and in all caps. That's net, no discount. Never, never, and my mind is made up. Never am I going to be such a cowardly, low-down dog as to acknowledge God. Two-faced gossiping babbits can go around here with their sanctimonious mouthings, their miserable worshiping, their Bible quotations and holier-than-thou attitudes, their nicey-nice Sunday worships, Monday robin actions, but never will they find me acknowledging God. Let me laugh. I'd like to shriek with the insane glee. My mind's made up. Insane. There it is again. Brr. This floor is cold on my knees. Why are the tears running like a river down my cheeks? Oh God, have mercy on my soul.